Welcome to the BSI ICE PAS 128 webinar. What is a PAS? A BS or a PAS has no legal standing. It is a simple, fast-track sponsored standard as stated and may be used as a seed document for a BS, EN or ISO in the future. A PAS has a steering group, formed for the specific PAS which is then dissolved at publication, whereas a BS has a long-term formal committee. Your presenter for today is Nicholas M. Zembillas, who has over 30 years' experience in subsurface utility engineering, which is a professional process of underground utility detection and mapping. He currently serves as an international technical advisor on subsurface utility engineering to over 15 committees, academic research projects, associations and institutes worldwide. His knowledge of national consensus standards throughout the USA, Canada, Australia, and South America was vital in launching the UK specification, BSI PAS 128 specification for underground utility detection, verification and location. His part on the BSI PAS 128 drafting committee takes him around the UK as a keynote speaker on this subject. At the end of this session you will have an understanding of BSI PAS 128, utility strike dangers and accountability, basic understanding of utility survey level of accuracy, the key themes, the hierarchical approach, survey types, detection methods, quality levels, absolute geospatial location, what PAS 128 could enable, risks of non-compliance, and further training opportunities. We join Nick talking about the Bar Hill case study.
A young man was using a jackhammer, and due to an unmarked electrical line, he actually pierced the casing of that arc, and he severe burns, was in critical condition. As a result of that incident, the industry gathered together, formed a consortium of civil engineers and constructors, and together they looked at this lesson learned and developed today what they call the best practice toolkit. The next one is with London Heathrow, another popular one that you've probably seen our colleague Andy Rhodes talk about. This is a situation where it was a design issue. As the engineering firm was designing the project that was underhand, they failed to get any of the buried services during the design phase of the baggage stillage design. When they went to construction, they actually came very close with entering a lightning rod into the ground and almost hit a live fuel main, and there were some nearby fire mains, communication cables. Luckily that didn't happen, but as Andy had indicated in his previous case study in public about this, had it hit, they did like a order of magnitude of what damages could have happened. Well, had that hit, there would have been in excess of 10,000 to 20,000 million liters per minute of fuel expelling into the environment. There was at one point, this could have created over 1 kilometer square at 1 centimeter deep. That's how much flow would have occurred in the area. The damages could reach anywhere from up to £1 million and also an airport closure. Lastly, this is a project Transport for London. This case is where the project had no utility detection and location undertaken, and as a result, when they went to construction, they were encountering conflicts with underground cables. In reality, 22 weeks of delay time. They had to go back and redesign, and then also the costs associated with the redesign and the damages for being delayed. This was a social economic delay impact. The PAS's goal is to deliver clarity, consistency, classification, and confidence. At the engineering and design phase of PAS 128, the goal is that we achieve clarity, and that is clarity in the services that we're going to provide as a practitioner is clear in its approach to that specific project and the methods and practices that will be applied to achieving the desired deliverable for that project. Consistency is that we wanted to see that in the marketplace that there was consistency in how that practice was taken, how the approach to the project was applied, and the application of how you collect the data. Are we using the right technologies? Are we applying the right processes of the technologies? to achieve consistency in the standard of care. Classification, we wanted to all make sure that the standard would, or the specification would identify clear, concise results, common classification terminologies to be used, and that the confidence of the information is that of being comprehensive and reliable as it relates to the means and methods that the information was gathered on the project itself. Then we wanted to talk about standardization. We felt that in the industry, the practitioners and the owners of projects, that we wanted to make sure that that PAS 128 created a standard means of how we communicate and deliver the deliverables in the formats that they may go to the client. And the most important category that we heard overwhelmingly in the industry was that we wanted to see accountability by the profession and the practitioners involved. Now I'll give you an overview on the PAS. These are the sections. I won't go through each one of them, but I'll be going through them individually. But as you see, there are 10 sections, plus we have a section on deliverables. This comes straight out of the PAS, and I'll read it to you. The purpose of PAS 128 is to set out clear and unambiguous provision to those engaged in the detection, verification, and location of active, abandoned, redundant, and unknown utilities. Now, what I just want to add to that is the key thing is the word those. Those means all stakeholders, project owner, agents of the project, whether they're engineers, designers, contractors, and then more importantly, the utility companies involved on that project, and lastly, the practitioner performing the subsurface utility engineering or utility survey activities. The process is broken down into 4 elements. We've got the project planning, quality levels, which I'll go in later, methodology applied to the quality levels, and then lastly, the deliverables. Project planning. This is an area in which we are advancing at the very beginning and planning for the project. This is where the practitioner of PAS 128 is meeting with the client, and the client and the practitioner are gaining an understanding of the client's specific project needs and requirements of what this project will be. And at that time, the practitioner walks away from that, gaining a better understanding, and along with developing its method statement on how it's going to produce that project to achieve the outcome and manage the risk that the client is allocating onto the practitioner. It also looks at the programs of works that will be taking place around the project, both during the design, during the practitioner's efforts, and then lastly, as the project goes to construction, the role and responsibility of the practitioner in fulfilling any other further obligations as it relates to the project. So it's all part of this planning process. And the 2 most important areas is as we discuss the project and how it's going to be achieved from a PAS 128 compliance, we're also taking into serious consideration the allocation of the risk and assessing how that risk is going to be managed by the project owner and the practitioner performing the service for the project. And then lastly, we were to look at a safety plan and develop a safety plan for us specifically doing our work in a very healthy and safe environment while we're out there performing our services as a practitioner. So here's some questions that we'll be seeing and responding as we do the training course. And these are questions that we need to go into asking and then achieving the specifics to it. So what type of scope of service is appropriate for the project? It's very important that PAS 128 and the training is going to help all stakeholders understand that a project-specific scope must be designed and tailored to fit the need of the project, as well as then manage the risk around that. But it's that cookie, one fits all scope, and we will be able to go into just explaining how during the training we'll work with the teams, the project owners, and the stakeholders to develop a specific scope. What should I expect during project delivery? That's a good question that is asked often, and that's important because many times we'll see where the practitioner and the stakeholders, owners, thought they had a good understanding of the project delivery, but when it came in, it was not clear. So a clear project delivery methodology will be used in applying how you work the project. What level of pass 128 techniques are needed to mitigate unnecessary risk? And lastly, what are the costs? Those two are important. That's where we go back to talking about consistency, wanting to make sure that the industry practitioners are consistent in the means in which they use their technique, apply, and then consistent in the cost of doing the services. And I think I've answered below how we address these. But that's part of what we'll be doing and working in the project planning phase of the training course. We have now going into survey types and quality level types. And as you see here, it starts from quality level D, which is desktop research, to the research all the way to verification, and I'll be talking about them next. This is just one table illustration that we wanted to share with you, and there are many others in the specification. But this is a normative guide for not just the practitioner, but for the owner of the project and those involved, the consultant involved in the design of the project, so that they gain an understanding that when the practitioner comes in and after working on developing a project-specific scope, this is a matrix that gives a guide to the various quality levels, survey types, and the levels of quality level that a practitioner may determine needed on a project to achieve what the project owner's goals are to be. So I just added this as an illustration. Actually, the one-day training course will go into pretty detail about how to apply this and how to use it in your scoping. Let's talk about the desktop. This is a very important phase. It's the desktop utility records research. It's basically where you're starting to do what I call the project due diligence. You're determining and gathering all the facts that you know about this project from various sources, and this is called survey category type D. And it's part of it is to identify the known utility owners in a project area, and there are means that the training course will delve into further as to how you achieve that. What are the tasks that you do, and who do you go to? Request asset information from utility owners. Conducting public and private agency queries, and then following up on those queries, even to the point of going out and interviewing people on site, and then collate all that data, compile it into one matrix, one report that takes you to the next step, which is taking that information and going out and doing a site reconnaissance. It's basically validating what you've gathered during the due diligence of quality level D, and then seeing if there's anything that the site itself exposes you to. And in some cases, this is done not only by the practitioner, but we'll see that a project owner will come with a project manager will come to be a part of that. But what we do is we take the deliverables, undertake on-site check to validate the information, and to find out if there's anything that we missed that is now visible outside, like a known utility marker or a known new excavation that has occurred. Mark up and annotate those existing deliverables that you've had in the quality level D deliverable, and mark up with any findings that you may have. Also, this is a great opportunity to do a video log on the project, to video record and timestamp what you did at that time. This is all part of the quality level C, and the training course will actually give you some site examples and documentation examples as to how to achieve and comply with quality level C. As we move on to the next level, and that's in the standard of the specification called detection. This is where we apply the surface geophysics technologies and the applications of them to achieve a higher degree of order with regards to accountability to the underground utilities. And this is called survey category type B. We obtain quality level D and C records. That's, again, it's a step-by-step process. You bring both of the preliminary quality level work product with you, and now we're out with the applied geophysics that are applicable to the site, to the type of utility, to the environmental and soil condition, and you apply those technologies through a process that are defined by each of the practitioners to achieve the maximum result and output, and you start to do your, what we call, scanning the ground. And you undertake the detection survey. Once that's done, then the location, the surveying aspect collects what we call the X and the Y information of those utilities. And in some cases where a client may require, there would be a Z value for an electronic reading for call level B. So it's this is the phase where location surveying is done to collect that information. Now, once that information is done, the next process is that information is then shared with the project owner, stakeholders, in this case could be utilities involved in the project, the engineering representative of the project owner, and it's that level, quality level B, electronic files and reports in which the project team and the practitioner will review that information as it relates to the proposed design or construction and start to determine where there are conflicts with what's proposing to be designed and built as it relates to what the practitioner has found in his 2D or 3D representation of quality level B, and start to determine where those clash points are. Those clash points are then identified with the project manager, the design team, to determine now, do we need more validation? Do we now need to prove it from a design perspective, tolerance-wise, X, Y, and Z, so we truly know whether we actually have a conflict or we don't have a conflict. And that's where we do that identifying and agreeing. We select the verification techniques, expose the utility by the means that are available, which is the vacuum or air water, and then we again do a location survey of all those test holes or pit holes or trenches that are done, and gather that information from a surveying standpoint and put that into the project design files for further evaluation. And that is called survey category type A. All throughout the process that I've identified for you for quality level B and quality level A involves the most important aspect is now it's collecting the data and labeling and collecting the data, which is very important. And that's the topographic surveying, the locate portion of this process. And here we, surveyors, collect the points that are identified on the project. And in the one-day training course, there will actually be discussion and guidance on the proper methodology or theories of applying the sequence of points you put down to properly depict the alignment of the facility. And that's a very important thing. If you don't put enough points down, you clearly, when you connect the dots, it may not give a true representation of what that facility is. So we'll have some discussions in the one-day course about identifying the number of markings for utility to represent its alignment. And this is done for both quality level survey type B as well as survey type A, and as well we survey if there's any locate GPR or EML transects that occur on the project. Now we get to the deliverables, which we call this the end game of the project deliverable cycle, a project life cycle, and that's the deliverables. And the deliverables are taken in form of, they can be in the form of a report and a survey electronically. Utility surveys are to be agreed upon, are to agree on the survey category level, what survey categories should be applied, and that sometimes is dictated by the project owner. And then lastly, descriptions of unusual findings and utility conflicts. So it's part of our responsibility as a practitioner is to report the findings. And even if we have found areas of concerns, which do happen, in which you're doing your investigation for utilities, and you end up identifying other areas of concerns like environmental plumes that may have encroached into the area that you found as a result of you doing your investigation. So we have an obligation as engineers, surveyors to share that information with the client, and that can be another report on our findings. But we are to follow the strict criteria of the surveying and location specifications that the client imposes within their own project delivery process. So it's not just what a practitioner creates, but must comply with the owner's specifications for deliverables. Deliverables can come in many formats. 2D, plan and profile. We're now seeing the emergence and more use of what we see 3D delivery packages, and use those on quite a few large projects, but we're seeing more 3D deliverables coming. And lastly, the emergence of BIM, building information modeling. and the importance of now BIM taking a proactive stance here about also recording the metadata and the features as it relates to underground assets. And that's important. So we'll see that BIM's requirement to pass 128 emerging, and it's much needed. Just to share some final closings on some success stories. UK is what I want to say is very unique because it has developed a path that has far, in my opinion, elevated or exceeded or grown from the development of the standards that occurred in the USA, Canada, Australia, and Malaysia. So the benefit of knowing those standards and their requirements, past 128's committee had an opportunity to gain from that, but to even look at the standard of care and best practices here and actually, in my opinion, kind of raise it a notch above and provided a little bit more emphasis on the process, the survey types, and the methodology applied to the survey types. So a very enhanced standard, but U.S., Canada, Australia, and Malaysia laid the foundation for many countries to follow. Some new countries that are still looking at developing their own standards that we've been involved in, South America. Italy is working on one, and France is one of the others that I've been working with and hearing that we've got a development as well. And there's also discussion going on right now with regards to looking at these these standards that relate to what I call subsurface utility engineering or utility detection and mapping, and developing actually an international standard, an ISO standard. This is the America cost-benefit study I wanted to list for. You've probably seen it before, but proven that the American standard and its practice was studied by the Federal Highway Administration. It concluded that a quantitative study savings of $4.62 was saved for every dollar that they spent on application of SUE in accordance with standards such as ASC 3802. Canada followed up, developed their standard in 2012. They had also, at that time, before 2012, were complying with ASC 3802, the American standard. They did a quantitative study, cost-benefit study with the University of Toronto, $3.41. Lastly, not lastly, but this is Australia's. Australia launched theirs in 2013. I know that they are applying it on their projects. They've been going around also doing some seminars themselves on educating the industry, but no cost-benefit study at the moment. Now let's talk about the training. What's the course objective? And here's what we as a group at ICE and the drafting panel had looked at. This course is for all those associated with and working alongside subsurface assets and utilities. It's to educate practitioners on the theory and principles of PAS 128 when conducting utility surveys, as well as educating clients such as planners, designers, and contractors on how to scope and apply PAS 128 to the civil engineering projects. The training also informs all stakeholders of what to expect from a PAS 128 deliverable, how can it be incorporated into the elements of other project designs such as BIM. There's going to be information on the course coming up now, but you'll also be able to go to ICE in the near future and look more. But its course is going to be called Engineering Smarter and Safer Digging PAS 128. Here's the syllabus of the course at the moment, and we welcome any feedback that you may have after the session. We'll have to provide you with an email address, but we'll again go into the details of what is PAS 128, what the changes. We'll identify what we say is here's the present standard of care without PAS 128, so we can benchmark what that looks like, and here's what PAS 128 will look like when you're complying with it. Again, we'll look at addressing more specifically how do you address risk. I won't go into every one of them, but these are your syllabus, the syllabus for the course. Again, we welcome any input, questions if you want to know more about the details. And at this point, we are in the development stage, working with ICE on the developing of the actual course itself. So all comments and input is welcome. If you want to know more, Again, feel free to reach out. The only one thing I'm looking at here, the training it is a one-day classroom session. It's not going to be web-based. It will come to either an ICE facility or an agency's facility or anyone who has a facility to accommodate the people. So it will be offered like a classroom environment. It will be offered on an open basis through our public program, so you'll have to log on to ICE, log in and register, even if you're doing it for your company, per se. And move on. Here's who you want to reach out to. And by the way, Jane is here right now, Jane Noakes. But if you have questions as it relates to the training course, and again, I want to emphasize, we do want input. We would like to hear from the industry of all market sectors as to what you want to see accomplished and presented in that one-day training course. But reach out to Jane, and at this time, we end this session and open it up for any questions that you may have.
Nick, fantastic. Thanks for that. It was a great overview of the PAS 128 training and PAS 128 itself. Whilst we're opening up the screen here to gather the questions, now I know we did ask you to put some comments in chat, but if you could put your questions in Q&A, it would make it a lot easier for us. I can see there's some there. Let me just try and close the windows. Let's open this up a bit. Oh, there we go. Whilst I'm doing this, I've got a quick question, Nick.
Yes.
About 9 months ago, we launched PAS 128 here at the ICE.
Yes.
I'd just like to know what's the in that 9 months, what has sort of the take-up been from the clients and practitioners in your experience?
I get, from my experience and hearing the feedback from not just practitioners that are in the business, but also some of the owners out there, it's been very positive. Too specific, I know Transport for London has held symposiums on the PAS. They've started and have actually written into their tenders the PAS 128 compliance. Have projects now being produced under PAS 128. I know Heathrow, Andy Rhodes, major airport worldwide, they have already taken and looked at the existing scope of work and are now modifying the language to that. But yeah, we're seeing it. And when I talk to some of the practitioners, they're actually educating their clients and informing them of PAS 128 and putting it into their scope of work for tender. And so it's a good question. I'm seeing that it is being provided and used. It's growing.
Okay, well, thank you. Okay, we've got quite a few questions actually. Maybe have a look at that one whilst I read this one out. You might want to listen, try and read and listen at the same time. Can you do that? Yes, give it a go. I'll read this one out. My experience is that quality level D to quality level A is carried out to a reasonable standard. However, there is often an issue with briefing a recollection of the workforce, even with marking out on site. Should utilizing augmented reality, stroke BIM, be pushed harder? And that's from Gerald and Knight.
I don't see that it's not. Should it be? It could be, yes. But I think there's still existing ways in which the way we produce our deliverable, if it's not clear to the client with regards to of how it's being depicted, then we need to look at what's being delivered to that client and determine whether we enhance it even more. Again, I haven't seen the particular deliverables from the D or the A that you may be talking about, but yeah, augmented reality is coming, and it's coming, and it is a very useful tool to apply once you're in the field. But if you're in design, augmented reality may not be the case. But what isn't the case is seeing more of the 3D element added to your project in the design phase. I hope I answered your question. I'm not saying it's definitely a technology that should be applied. But I'd like to first get a good understanding as to looking at what's being delivered now in the marketplace with respect to quality level B and quality level A. Once we get a good handle of what's being depicted and we see that there's a consistent deliverable, then I can better address where the gaps are.
Hey, how about this one?
Okay, a contractor has quoted a 20% uplift for specifying PAS 128 for non-PAS 1.
Yeah, over non-PAS
PAS 128 detection. Will be.
However, claims that a non-PAS 128 detection and verification will be to the same quality. Can you explain where the extra cost comes from?
Well, I'm puzzled by the question. So the contractor says one contractor is charging 20% more for saying he or she's compliant with PAS 128. The non-PAS, I'm making an assumption here, the non-PAS contractor is making the same claim, but not following PAS 128, and that individual is claiming the same quality. I first see, I've got to compare the quality of the information. If the quality of the information is correct, then we need to be saying to ourselves, to the person that's producing the 20% uplift, why is your 20% uplift so much higher? Were you using the same processes, the same technologies? So I can't really tell you why there's an uplift. I'd have to look at the difference of the two deliverables and the effort that went into it.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. Okay, here we go. From Giovanni Quartillo. Does the UK have certification standards for their survey locators regarding this process of underground infrastructure detection? I don't know.
That's a very good question. And at the moment, there are institutions, organizations such as TSA, the Surveyors Association, that's working diligently and closely with ICES for that very purpose. They were very strong sponsors, steering committee members with PAS 128. There was also the Utility Detection and Mapping Association that was collaborating as well. So at the moment, there are certain courses offered in TSA, which TSA is looking at those course curriculums and going through the effort of updating them to be PAS 128 compliant. And so I know that that's happening. And so I would say, yes, there is courses. And I encourage you to go out to reach out to TSA, and they can guide you better. And even also, we see in the future with ICE that the day training courses will lead to a certificate of completion that could then be formed as a means of an agency saying, a public agency or even a major consultant saying, if you're going to be a practitioner of PAS 128, we would like to see that you have taken these courses and show us proof of completion. But reach out to TSA. They can help you.
Thank you, Nick. We're going to hear from Mike Agger. Who would you expect to carry out each stage? For example, the designer does the desktop and recon, and the contractor does the detection and verification?
No, that's what the PAS was intended to demonstrate is that this is a process, and a process that is not to be, in my opinion, unbundled. And we don't see it unbundled, meaning that it's broken up and records research or our desktops are done by one entity or one stakeholder, which it happens, by the way. What happens there, though, when you start unbundling the processes of PAS 128, then you just basically, what you've done is you sprinkle the risk allocation to multiple parties. And the project owner can do that. Project owner can say, I'll go ahead, I'll take on the risk of doing the quality level D records research, and any incompleteness or errors in that, I'm accountable for those errors. What the PAS is intended and what the process should be is to hold the professional PAS 128 practitioner accountable for performing those services under his or her direction. Now, if PAS practitioner wants to outsource a level of that activity, whether it's D, C, B, or A, but at least the practitioner of that company is taking the liability and being accountable for it. But what we do see is those levels are done by the one practitioner's resources. And again, I've been involved in projects. I think there's practitioners out there on this end that have been involved where a client has said, here's all of my stats research. Here, you don't need to do it. Well, under PAS 128, we would not be compliant to quality level D as a practitioner because we didn't perform it. It was given to us, and we cannot assume the liability of saying that that was done to its completeness.
Thank you. I'm going to take Mark Hobble's question here. Now, I know we've lost the microphone, the sound with Mike, which is a shame because I know he was going to talk about this particular. He was going to answer this question himself. Hopefully, you can answer it, Nick. I'm sure you can. It's all to deal with the 2nd of March. It's coming up. The question is, how does this pad fit with wider buried underground services? This is a good survey. What about wider records and data exchange?
I think, Mark, your question is spot on. And this is also the challenge that we had in developing PAS 128. When you look at the PAS and then you look at our last section, which is deliverables, not much could we say other than what we are doing currently as a standard of care. But this is an area in which much more discussion, debate, and development needs to occur with regards to how are we going to record, depict, communicate the information about what we collect and where should we put that information beyond just a project specific. So, Mark, with the goal that I see IC's doing with the upcoming launching of a new standard with regards to the buried assets in BIM, I think that is critical. I think it's critical that we start looking at, as we get good and better at collecting information, detecting information, we need to have an excellent means of how do we depict it, store it, and maintain it. And it's needed.
So this is like sort of the next.
It's the next path. It's allowing us to take PAS 128, which goes into what I call great detail with the process of planning for it, detecting, verification, locating it. But after you locate it, how are you managing it? And this is where we need that new specification.
And I think Mark would have also emphasised that you did mention it. It's on the second. It launches on the 2nd of March. We are asking for people to log on and join us. You do have to register. And I'll just say that if you put into the IC website improving visibility, 2 good words, improving visibility, up will come the 2nd of March event. Do join that one here if you can make it. It's at 1 Great George Street. And we've got basically all the panels are involved in that.
Yeah.
That's the information systems panel, the health and safety panel, the geospatial panel, and the municipal panels as well, and the BIM action group are heavily involved. So this is a very coordinated panel approach to this issue.
In my opinion, this is a very important panel. It's important because it's going to, as I call, close the loop on the full process of underground assets, protecting and maintaining underground assets.
Okay, let's get back to PAS 128. Which one are we looking at?
Let's see.
Just looking at some questions here.
Yeah. Let's guess. Understand the benefits captured in the U.S. since introduction of PAS 128. Have any UK organizations witnessed the same level of benefits? I would, the only ones that I've heard about realizing some benefits, seeing a difference in the deliverable, and again, I've talked about 2 of them right now. It's I hear a lot from transport from London. I've heard from some of the practitioners talking to a SubScan. I've also talked to Peter Barker. But that's a good question to throw out to all the panel, all the guests that are participating. We'd love to hear your input if you know many that are either we're seeing positive results or not.
Okay, there's some more there.
So here's one from Giovanni Catillo.
We've had one from him already, I think, didn't we?
Will each organization be required to perform their own survey information, or will this administered through a single entity dedicated to locating underground infrastructures? Giovanni, I don't quite understand it. Are you looking at this is going to be like a one agency storage of information? Or are you relating this to a project specific? I think what PAS is about is a process for projects, whether they're design or construction. It's not meant to be what I would call an asset management maintenance process. I think that's the other the standard that we're talking about is coming up. So maybe I misunderstand the question.
Okay. Oof. Okay, there's one here from Siad Muhaddin. Would we get a copy of the presentation?
The answer is yes. For the webinar, yes, they will get a copy of the presentation. And then for the one-day training seminar, that's part of the cost package that will go out because you'll be studying against that. So as we're doing the course and talking about it, you need to have a copy of your PAS 128. So I think that'll be a part of what we have to provide. And again, I'm just saying that's a cost.
Yeah. Talking about cost, there's a few questions along the lines of why is there a charge for the PAS when other PASs are free? That we can't answer that. That's basically the PAS is a BSI document, and that's what they charge. Without a BSI representative here, so we got another question here. Does the course include any technical training content?
The course will, as it relates to a project manager, a practitioner who's preparing a scope, preparing a project delivery package, will provide that high-level training. But to get into the actual training itself, to actually where you're producing a project delivery package or you're producing your method statement that's PAS compliant. Now, I think what we're going to do is look towards the agencies such as TSA to take the training that the one-day training IC is providing and really get into what I call the nuts and bolts of theories, principles, and best practices related to accomplishing those processes.
This one from Nicola Metcher. The University of Birmingham is investigating exactly this, or this by assessing how many PAS 128 compliance surveys have been carried out and or specified in attendance.
Nicole, that's excellent. I think that would be good if you can share that in the near future with ICE and let them post that.
Okay, I think slightly coming to the end there, we'll maybe take one more. We're just looking through. We'll take one more question. This one?
Yeah.
Okay, so in fact, Nicole says we will follow this up with specific case studies to look into specific case studies.
We're going to scroll down, but listen, for all of these questions, we will be able to take those questions, right?
Yeah.
And then what I'll do is I'll work with Jane and Richard, and we'll look at these questions, and I'll put some responses back, and we'll send them back out to everybody.
That'd be great.
Let me just take one more.
One more?
Let's see. Okay, here's a good one. This is a good question by Stephanie DeCharge. How does PAS 128 affect local highway authorities carrying out maintenance on the local highway network? Very good question. What we hope to achieve as a result of this specification hitting the marketplace is that we hope that the agencies such as the highway agency will look at PAS and not only look at it from a standpoint of their design and construction, but as they're out doing their own maintenance work, just need for them to be sensitive that there is a PAS process when they're doing their own, detection and protection of their own facilities, their own signalization wires or their ITS cables. So, yeah, I hope that they will follow suit. It's just going to take more education and awareness in the marketplace to let the agency know about the standard and how it should be applied.
Okay. All right, Nick. Well, I think we'll have to wind up there. I do apologise for the loss of our chair. Especially since you had to put up with me to stand in, and I'm just the technician.
You did well.
So, well, thanks for that. But I think we got through quite a few questions there. Thank you there for really covering the PAS 128 and the training.
You're quite welcome. I apologize if I didn't come across too clear, but I've had 2 days of the flu, and the throat is just coming back to normal. But if you didn't hear me clearly, I apologize.
And I think I'm picking it up.
Oh, gosh.
No, thank you very much. As I said, also to those that are listening to this as a recording later on, because this has been recorded, apologies for missing the first 2 slides at the beginning, but I think you'll pick up most of the info that's needed. Thank you very much for joining us this lunchtime. Do join us again. There's quite a few webinars coming up at the IIT.
Thank you.